5 types of people God elevates, and why your life looks different. There is a kind of elevation that doesn't announce itself, doesn't rush, and doesn't look impressive while it's happening. It unfolds quietly, often in seasons where you feel overlooked, misunderstood, or delayed. You keep showing up, keep obeying, keep trusting God, yet your life doesn't resemble the fast-moving success stories you see around you. Instead, it feels slower, heavier, more demanding, and sometimes you wonder why your path looks so different. According to the Bible, God's elevation is never accidental and never shallow. He does not lift people simply because they are gifted, ambitious, or visible. He elevates with intention. He watches how you live when no one is watching, how you respond when obedience costs you comfort, and how you carry yourself when recognition doesn't come. God is far more concerned with who you are becoming than how quickly you arrive. You may have noticed that some people God elevates don't look elevated at first. Their lives are marked by restraint instead of striving, patience instead of pressure, depth instead of noise. They are not rushing to be seen, yet influence seems to find them. They are not fighting for position, yet doors open in time. This is not luck. This is the result of a shaping process that happens long before elevation becomes visible. If you've ever felt like God is doing something deeper in you while others seem to move ahead, this message is for you. If your obedience feels costly, your growth feels slow, and your journey feels hidden, there is a reason. God elevates certain types of people because He knows what their character can carry. And when He does elevate them, their lives look different, not because they tried harder, but because they were formed more thoroughly. This is not about comparison. It's about clarity. Understanding who God elevates brings peace to your waiting and meaning to your discipline. It helps you recognize that the delay is not denial, and the hidden season is not wasted. God is shaping lives that can carry responsibility without losing humility, influence without losing integrity, and blessing without losing dependence on Him. As you listen, allow God to show you where you are in this process. Elevation is not something you chase. It is something God releases when your life is ready to carry it. Number 1, God elevates the faithful. Those who obey when no one is applauding. One of the clearest patterns in Scripture is that God elevates faithfulness long before He elevates visibility. Faithfulness is rarely dramatic. It doesn't draw attention or invite applause. Most of the time it looks like obedience in ordinary places, consistency in uncelebrated roles, and integrity when shortcuts would be easier. God watches how you live when no one is clapping, no one is rewarding, and no one is noticing. Those moments matter more than you realize. Faithful people keep showing up even when results are slow. They obey God when it costs them convenience, reputation, or momentum. They do not serve because it advances them. They serve because it honors God. Over time, this kind of obedience builds something deep within you. It forms discipline. It produces steadiness. It teaches you how to remain grounded when circumstances don't change quickly. This is why the lives of faithful people often look different. While others chase visibility, they guard integrity. While others wait to be noticed, they stay consistent. While others grow impatient, they remain steady. God uses these hidden seasons to build trust. Faithfulness proves to God that when influence increases, your character won't collapse under the weight. There are seasons when faithfulness feels unrewarded. You may wonder why obedience hasn't produced visible progress yet. But God is not ignoring your consistency. He is measuring it. Elevation in God's kingdom is built on trust, and trust is earned through repeated obedience in unseen places. When God elevates the faithful, it rarely feels sudden to Him, even if it looks sudden to others. It is supported by years of quiet yeses, private obedience, and unseen sacrifices. And because the foundation was laid in secret, The elevation does not intoxicate the heart. It feels like stewardship, not entitlement. If your life feels repetitive, hidden, or uncelebrated right now, do not underestimate what God is forming. Faithfulness may not feel powerful, but it is persuasive to God. And when He lifts the faithful, their lives look different because they were shaped by obedience long before opportunity arrived. Number 2, God elevates the humble, those who refuse to compete for position. Another group God consistently elevates are the humble, those who do not compete for position, recognition, or influence. Humility is not weakness, and it is not self-neglect. Biblical humility is strength under control. It is choosing to trust God with your placement instead of forcing your way forward. Humble people believe that what is meant for them cannot be taken by someone else. Humility changes how you move through life. You stop measuring yourself against others. You stop rushing seasons. You stop fighting for validation. Instead, you focus on obedience and let God handle timing and positioning. This posture honors God because it acknowledges His authority over your life, and God responds to humility with favor that striving can never produce. The lives of humble people often look different because they are not driven by insecurity. They don't panic when others move ahead. They don't manipulate outcomes. They don't exhaust themselves trying to prove their worth. Their confidence is quiet because it is rooted in God, not in position. God elevates the humble because humility protects the heart. Pride corrupts elevation, but humility sustains it. When influence increases, humble people remain teachable. When responsibility grows, they stay dependent on God. When success arrives, they give glory away instead of absorbing it. There are moments when humility feels costly. You may stay silent when you could speak up. You may step back when you could push forward. You may watch others receive opportunities you believe you were ready for. But humility is never wasted. God sees restraint. He sees trust, and He honors it. If you've chosen not to compete, not to force doors, and not to rush God's timing, your posture has meaning. God elevates the humble because they can carry elevation without losing themselves. And when He lifts them, their lives look different because their security was never tied to position. It was anchored in God all along. Number 3, God elevates the refined, those who allow Him to shape their character. God does not elevate raw potential. He elevates refined character. Refinement is the process that happens when God is more interested in who you are becoming than in where you are going. It is often uncomfortable, slow, and deeply personal. Refinement exposes attitudes, motives, reactions, and habits that cannot survive the weight of elevation. And instead of bypassing those areas, God stays with them until they are shaped. This is why refinement often feels like resistance. You may feel corrected more than celebrated, stretched more than rewarded. God may allow pressure, disappointment, or delay not to punish you, but to reveal what still needs His touch. Refinement removes what would eventually sabotage you if elevation came too soon. God loves you too much to lift you before your character can carry it. Refined lives look different because they carry depth. People who have been refined respond instead of reacting. They listen more carefully. They move more slowly. They are less defensive and more teachable. Their faith has been tested, corrected, and strengthened, so it no longer depends on emotion or circumstance. Refinement gives them spiritual weight that cannot be faked. There are moments when refinement feels unfair. You may wonder why God seems focused on changing you instead of changing your situation. But God knows that elevation without refinement leads to collapse. Influence without integrity creates damage. Responsibility without maturity produces regret. So God stays in the process until what He lifts will last. If you've walked through seasons where God confronted your pride, softened your heart, or exposed areas you didn't want to face. This was not rejection. It was investment. God refines what he intends to use. He disciplines those he plans to trust. And though refinement is costly, it is always purposeful. When God elevates the refined, their lives look different. Because they are not easily shaken. They've been corrected without becoming bitter, humbled without becoming insecure, and shaped without losing hope. Their strength comes from surrender, not resistance, and that kind of character can carry elevation without being destroyed by it. Number 4, God elevates the dependent, those who rely on him rather than themselves. God also elevates those who have learned how to depend on him. Dependence in God's kingdom is not weakness or passivity. It is the recognition that your life, direction, and strength are sustained by God, not by your own ability to control outcomes. Dependent people understand their limits, and instead of hiding them, they bring them before God. Dependence changes how you make decisions. You pray before acting. You wait instead of rushing. You seek God's wisdom rather than trusting your instincts alone. This posture slows you down, but it also protects you. God honors dependence because it keeps you connected to him, especially when elevation brings pressure and responsibility. Lives marked by dependence often look different because they are not driven by anxiety. Dependent people are not neurotic when plans change. They are not shaken when answers delay. Their confidence rests in God's faithfulness rather than their own competence. This creates peace that is noticeable and stability that lasts. God elevates the dependent because dependence sustains elevation. Self-reliance may get you moving quickly, but it cannot keep you grounded when influence increases. Dependent people keep seeking God after doors open. They keep praying after success comes. They remain teachable, aware that without God nothing they carry would stand. Dependence is often learned through weakness. God allows situations where your strength runs out, where your plans fail, or where your effort isn't enough. These moments teach you where your help truly comes from. Instead of resenting these lessons, dependent people let them reshape their trust. If you've found yourself leaning on God more deeply than before, asking him before decisions, trusting him when clarity is missing, waiting when you would rather act, this is not hesitation, it is maturity. God is shaping a heart that knows its source. When God elevates the dependent, their lives look different, because their confidence is not self-generated, it is God-sustained, and that dependence becomes the very thing that allows elevation to remain healthy, humble, and enduring. Number 5. God elevates the surrendered, those who release control and outcomes to him. One of the clearest signs that God is preparing to elevate you is surrender. Not passive resignation, but active trust. Surrender is the moment you stop trying to manage outcomes and start placing them fully in God's hands. It is choosing obedience without guarantees, faithfulness without leverage, and trust without timelines. This kind of surrender changes a person deeply, and God honors it. Surrendered people no longer live driven by personal agendas. They still work hard, plan wisely, steward what they've been given, but they hold everything loosely. They don't demand a specific outcome from God. They don't insist on being elevated in a particular way. They obey because God asked, not because obedience promises a visible reward. This posture frees the heart from anxiety and opens it to peace. Lives shaped by surrender look different because they are not controlled by fear of loss. Surrendered people are not terrified of being overlooked. They are not consumed by the need to secure their future. They trust that God sees more than they do and knows when and how to lift them. This trust produces calm, patience, and clarity in seasons where others feel restless. God elevates the surrendered because surrender protects the soul. When elevation comes, surrendered people don't cling to position. They don't make influence an identity. They don't resist change out of fear. They remain open-handed, knowing that what God gives can also be adjusted, redirected, or removed if necessary. This flexibility allows God to move freely in their lives. Surrender is often tested in seasons where things don't go as planned. You may feel led to release something you worked hard for. You may be asked to wait longer than expected. You may have to obey without knowing what comes next. These moments reveal whether surrender is real or conditional. God watches how you respond when control is taken out of your hands. If you've reached a place where you've stopped striving, stopped forcing, and stopped trying to manage every outcome, this is not giving up. It is giving over. God elevates those who trust Him enough to release control because they can carry blessing without turning it into bondage. When God lifts the surrendered, their lives look different because their peace does not rise and fall with circumstances. Their security rests in God, not in outcomes. And that kind of freedom makes them safe vessels for whatever God chooses to entrust to them. Number 6. Why God's elevation often looks slow, hidden, or unfair. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that God's elevation rarely follows a visible or predictable timeline. It often looks slow, hidden, and even unfair when compared to others. You may watch people advance quickly while your own journey feels restrained. You may wonder why obedience hasn't produced the progress you expected. This tension is not accidental. It is part of how God protects what He plans to elevate. God often hides before He lifts. Hidden seasons allow Him to work without interference, comparison, or pressure. While others see stillness, God sees preparation. While you feel delayed, God is forming foundations. Elevation without preparation may look impressive, but it rarely lasts. God is more concerned with longevity than speed. These seasons feel unfair because they test trust. You may do everything right and still wait. You may obey and still feel unseen. But God is not measuring your life against someone else's timeline. He is shaping you for a specific assignment that requires specific depth, maturity, and resilience. Comparison distorts perspective. Trust restores it. Hidden elevation also protects you. God knows what exposure too early can do to a heart, a calling, a future. He knows what you are not yet ready to carry. And He withholds not to harm you, but to guard you. What feels like restriction is often mercy. God's timing also reveals motives. Slow seasons expose whether you are serving God for position or for relationship. Waiting purifies desire. It separates ambition from obedience. Those who remain faithful in hidden seasons prove that their trust is real. If God's elevation in your life feels delayed or invisible, do not assume denial. God often elevates internally before He elevates externally. He lifts your discernment, your character, your faith, and your endurance long before He lifts your position. When elevation finally comes, it often surprises others, but not God. He has been preparing you all along, and because of that preparation, your life looks different. It carries depth, it carries peace, it carries stability that speed could never produce. Number 7. Living faithfully while God decides the elevation. The final and perhaps most defining mark of those God elevates is this: they learn how to live faithfully without knowing when elevation will come. This is where trust becomes real. It is one thing to obey when progress is visible, but it is another to remain faithful when nothing seems to change. God watches how you live when elevation is no longer your motivation, when obedience stands on its own. Living faithfully while God decides the elevation requires a deep surrender of timelines. You stop asking, "When will it happen?" and begin asking, "How can I honor God here?" Your focus shifts from arrival to alignment. You are no longer obsessed with outcomes. You are committed to faithfulness. This shift brings peace. because your joy is no longer tied to future promotion but to present obedience. People who live this way often look different. They are steady while others are frantic. They are content without being complacent. They serve wholeheartedly without resentment. They don't withdraw because they feel overlooked, and they don't perform to be noticed. Their faith is rooted, not reactive. They have learned that God's approval is not delayed simply because elevation is. God values this stage deeply because it reveals maturity. Faithfulness without guarantees proves that your trust is genuine. It shows God that you will remain obedient, whether He lifts you publicly or keeps you hidden longer. This kind of faithfulness cannot be rushed, and it cannot be faked. In this season, God teaches you how to steward your heart. You learn to guard against bitterness, comparison, and discouragement. You learn how to celebrate others without questioning your own journey. You learn how to stay hopeful without becoming impatient. These lessons shape your inner life so that when elevation comes, it enhances who you are rather than exposing what you lack. Living faithfully also means staying open. You don't harden yourself against disappointment. You don't close off emotionally to protect yourself from delay. You remain available to God, willing to move when He leads, willing to wait when He restrains. This openness keeps your spirit tender and responsive. If you are in a season where you are simply being asked to stay faithful, no promotion, no recognition, no clear change, this is not a wasted chapter. God is watching how you carry yourself here. He is shaping the kind of life that can handle elevation without losing integrity. When God finally decides to elevate you, it will not feel like rescue. It will feel like alignment. Because you learned how to live faithfully before elevation arrived, elevation will not define you. It will simply expand what God already built within you. Conclusion: when God elevates, He carries the weight. God's elevation is never careless, rushed, or random. It is intentional, measured, and deeply connected to who you are becoming. Throughout Scripture, God elevates people not because they demanded it, but because their lives proved they could carry it. Faithfulness, humility, refinement, dependence, surrender, patience, and endurance are not delays to elevation. They are the very reasons it comes. If your life feels different right now, if your journey feels slower, quieter, or heavier than others, do not assume something is wrong. God often works most deeply where He plans to trust most fully. What feels like delay may be protection. What feels like obscurity may be preparation. And what feels like discipline may be love shaping you for something greater. You are not behind. You are being formed. God is not ignoring your obedience. He is building on it. Elevation in God's kingdom is not about being seen. It is about being ready. And readiness is forged in hidden places where trust is tested and faithfulness is refined. Take a moment to reflect on where God has you right now. Ask Him what He is teaching you in this season. Resist the urge to compare or rush. Stay faithful where you are planted. God knows exactly when your life will be ready to carry what He intends to release. If this message spoke to you, share it with someone who may be walking through a similar season. Stay connected for more messages that strengthen faith, bring clarity, and encourage steady obedience. When God elevates you, He also carries the weight of that elevation. You are not responsible for forcing the timing, only for remaining faithful until He decides the moment is right.